Your mind is not broken. It only feels that way. The anxiety that arrives without warning, the thoughts that circle the same territory for the hundredth time without resolving, the emotional swings that move through you faster than you can track them, leaving you exhausted and slightly confused about who you were an hour ago. The sense that somewhere inside you, something is fighting something else, and you are caught in the middle of a war you did not declare and cannot seem to stop. You have probably been told this is a mental health problem, a chemistry problem, a childhood problem, a stress problem, something to be managed, medicated, therapized, optimized, or simply endured as the unavoidable background noise of modern life. Some of those things may be partially true, but Plato saw something underneath all of them that nobody has said more clearly since. The chaos you feel is not random. It is not evidence of damage. It is not the malfunction of a broken system. It is the symptom of a soul out of order, a soul in which the parts that were designed to work in a specific hierarchy have lost their hierarchy, in which the part that should lead has been pushed aside, and the parts that were designed to serve have taken the wheel. And the result is exactly what you would expect from any system operating outside its proper structure. Noise, conflict, exhaustion, the specific and bewildering experience of being at war with yourself. Plato spent years mapping this, and what he found is not just philosophically interesting, it is the most useful description of psychological suffering ever written. Start with the experience itself, because you know it from the inside. There are days when you feel genuinely like yourself, when thought is clear and emotion is present without being overwhelming, and your actions align with what you actually value. When you move through the world with something that feels like integrity, like the different parts of your inner life are pulling in the same direction. These days feel rare, and when they end, there is something almost like grief in noticing they are gone. Then there are the other days, the ones that feel like being inside a storm you cannot locate, where anxiety arrives before thought, where the emotional weather changes faster than you can track, where you find yourself reacting to things in ways that surprise even you, where the voice of clarity, the part of you that knows what you actually value and how you actually want to live, is present but distant, like a signal getting lost in static. You are the same person on both kinds of days. The difference is not your character. It is the order of things inside you. On the good days, reason is leading. The part of you that can see clearly and choose deliberately is in its proper place. And the other parts, the fire of thumos, the appetite of the body and the nervous system, are following its direction. On the other days, reason has been displaced. Something else is running things. And the experience of that displacement is precisely the chaos, the noise, the exhausting sense of inner conflict that has become so common that many people have started to accept it as simply what the mind is like. Plato would say, that is not what the mind is like. That is what the mind is like when it is out of order, and order can be restored. To understand what Plato meant by the ordered soul, you have to understand what he was describing in each of its three parts and why the hierarchy between them matters so completely. He divided the soul into three distinct sources of motivation: the rationale, the spirited, and the appetitive. Each one is real. Each one has a genuine and necessary role, and each one, when it occupies the wrong position in the hierarchy, produces specific and predictable forms of suffering. The rational soul is the part that can see the whole picture. It operates on the longest timescale, holds the most complete view of consequences, and is capable of genuine deliberation. When Plato said the rational soul should lead, he was not making an argument for cold intellectualism or the suppression of feeling. He was describing the part of the psyche that has access to the most complete information and is therefore best equipped to make decisions about direction. Think of it as the part of you that, in your clearest moments, knows what genuinely matters to you, what you actually value when you are not in the grip of immediate emotion or appetite, what kind of person you are trying to be, and what kind of life you are trying to build. That clarity, that access to your own genuine values, is the rational soul functioning as it should. The spirited soul, thumos, is the part that generates fire, pride, shame, courage, the hunger for recognition, the fierce protectiveness over dignity, It is the engine of all sustained effort. Without it, reason can identify the right direction, but cannot generate the energy to move toward it. Thumos provides the will, the force, the refusal to give up on something genuinely worth pursuing. When thumos is directed by reason toward worthy goals, it is the most powerful ally the soul has. It is what allows humans to endure difficulty, maintain commitments, face fear, and sustain effort over long periods of time for things that matter. When thumos is not directed by reason, it becomes the source of some of the most destructive patterns in human psychological life. And this is where the hidden war begins. Here is the specific mechanism by which the soul falls out of order, and why the result is the particular kind of suffering most people in the modern world are carrying. Thumos, when it is not being directed by reason towards something genuinely worthy, does not simply go quiet. It does not wait patiently for better direction. It generates its own agenda. And that agenda is organized entirely around one thing: threat detection. The undirected thumos is a part of the soul that is constantly scanning the environment for evidence of disrespect, dismissal, inadequacy, and threat to the self-image. It generates the oversensitivity that makes small slights feel enormous, the rumination that replays a difficult conversation 40 times, looking for what it meant about you. The anxiety that is not actually about the future situation you are worried about, but about what that situation might reveal about your worth. This is where overthinking comes from, not from having an active mind, from having a wounded thumos that has been given no worthy direction and has therefore turned its energy toward managing the threat of being seen as insufficient. Every anxious thought that circles without resolution, every mental replay of a conversation where you said the wrong thing or someone responded in a way that stung, every rehearsal of imaginary future confrontations, every waking up at 3 a.m., construction of worst-case scenarios. This is not reasoned thinking. It has none of reason's coherence or its access to genuine perspective. It is thumos in the dark, scanning for threats, generating elaborate threat management simulations that feel like thinking but produce no clarity, because they were never designed to produce clarity. They were designed to produce vigilance, and vigilance is the right response to a genuine threat. But when it is the permanent background state of a soul that has no worthy direction and no genuine hierarchy, it produces the specific exhaustion of a mind that has been running its alarm systems continuously for years without anything to actually protect. Now add appetite to this picture, because the disordered soul does not only suffer from the undirected thumos, it also suffers from the ungoverned appetite. When reason is not leading, appetite does not remain in its proper place either. It expands into the space that reason has vacated, and it begins to make decisions that reason would not make. The appetitive soul, as we explored previously, operates on the shortest time scale. It wants resolution of discomfort now. It wants stimulation when there is boredom, calm when there is agitation, relief when there is pain. It does not think about what produces those states. It simply reaches for whatever is most immediately available. And in the modern world, what is most immediately available has been engineered specifically to satisfy the surface of the appetite without addressing its root. So the anxious mind that thumos has been running at high alert, exhausted and overstimulated and looking for relief, reaches toward what appetite is offering: the scroll, the food, the drink, the distraction, the numbing, the temporary lowering of the alarm through whatever is within reach. And this provides brief relief, real relief, briefly. The alarm quiets, the circling stops, the overstimulated nervous system gets a moment of something that feels like rest, and then it returns. The alarm comes back, the circling resumes, and now appetite has learned that the relief is available, and it reaches for it faster next time, and the cycle accelerates. This is the hidden war inside the mind, seen from the inside. Thumos running threat simulations it cannot resolve, appetite reaching for relief that cannot nourish, reason present but distant, unable to break through the noise generated by the other two parts operating without direction. And the person sitting in the middle of all of this, exhausted and confused and wondering why they cannot seem to find the stillness they can sometimes briefly remember having, is not broken. They are experiencing precisely what Plato said a disordered soul would experience. Every symptom of that experience is predictable from the structure, and every symptom has a structural solution. Plato used a specific word for the state of the ordered soul. He called it harmonia, harmony, not in the soft or vague sense, in the precise sense that a musical instrument is in harmony when its strings are tuned to their proper tension and produce, together, a sound that none of them could produce alone. The soul in harmonia is not one in which all conflict has been eliminated. It is one in which each part is performing its proper function, and the relationship between them is correctly ordered. Reason leads. Thumos serves the direction reason has chosen, providing the fire and the courage and the sustained will that make movement possible. Appetite is acknowledged and met in its genuine needs without being allowed to govern decisions. It has no capacity to make well. And the experience of that order is not the absence of feeling. It is not numbness or detachment or the elimination of passion. It is the specific quality of coherence, of being, in the deepest sense, on your own side, of moving through a day as a unified thing rather than a collection of competing voices with no one in charge. Plato considered this the foundation of everything else, not a final state to be achieved after years of philosophical training, the prerequisite for any genuine functioning at all. The baseline that makes clear thought, genuine emotion, real relationship, and meaningful action possible. Without it, nothing else works properly, not because you lack the ingredients, but because the kitchen is on fire and nothing can be cooked. Here is where Plato's diagnosis becomes practically useful, because the path back to order is not mysterious. It is not available only to philosophers or the spiritually gifted or people with unlimited time for contemplation. It is available to anyone who understands the structure well enough to know what they are actually trying to do. And what you are trying to do is not silence your mind. You are trying to restore the hierarchy. The first thing that needs to happen is that reason needs to be given back its proper position, not by force, not by overriding thumos and appetite through sheer will, but by doing the specific thing that reason alone can do and that the other parts cannot, seeing clearly. When the mind is in chaos, the most natural response is to try to resolve the chaos from within it, to think harder about what is causing the anxiety, to analyze the circling thoughts more carefully, to work out, through more of the same mental activity that is generating the noise, what is actually wrong and what should be done about it. This does not work. And the reason it does not work is that what feels like thinking in those moments is not primarily reason operating. It is thumos running threat simulations. It has the syntax of thought without its substance. It circles because it is not designed to resolve. It is designed to stay alert. Reason does not work from inside the noise. It works from a moment of genuine distance from it. This is why every contemplative tradition in human history, from Plato's dialogues to meditation to philosophy to genuine prayer, has at its center some practice of stepping back from the immediate content of the mind and observing it rather than being it. Not to escape the mind, to occupy a position from which reason can actually function. When you step back from the circling thought and observe it, something changes. You are no longer the thought. You are the part of you that is watching the thought. And that part, the observer, is much closer to reason than the content it is observing. From that position, clarity becomes possible. Not the forced clarity of someone thinking harder. The natural clarity of someone who has created enough distance to see what is actually happening. And what is actually happening is almost always simpler than the thought storm made it seem. Thumos is frightened about something. Appetite is reaching for relief. Reason was not being consulted. That's the diagnosis, every time. In slightly different forms, with slightly different content, but always that same structure underneath. The second thing that needs to happen is that thumos needs to be given worthy direction. This is the intervention that most approaches to inner peace miss entirely. They try to calm thumos, to reduce the fire, to lower the activation through breathing or relaxation or distraction. These things provide temporary relief, but they do not address the root. Thumos is not generating anxiety because it has too much energy. It is generating anxiety because it has no worthy direction for that energy and has defaulted to threat scanning as its occupation. The relief is not less fire. It is better direction for the fire that is already there. And this requires reason to genuinely engage with thumos, not to override it, to work with it, to ask what it is actually protecting, what wound it is managing, what it needs to feel safe enough to stop scanning. Because underneath every anxious thumos is a specific fear, usually a very old one, something about being seen as insufficient, something about not being chosen, something about trying and failing publicly, something about being exposed as less than the self-image requires. These fears are not irrational. They were formed in real experiences where real things were at stake. But they have been generalized by a thumos that was never helped to examine them into a permanent background vigilance that treats every situation as potentially containing the original threat. Reason can see this, can name it, can say with genuine clarity, I understand what you are protecting. I see where this came from, and I want to tell you that the original threat is not as present as it feels, that the situation we are in now does not carry the stakes it did then, that you can let the alarm level lower, not because there is no risk, but because I am here and I am watching, and you do not need to do this alone. This is not a one-time conversation. It is a practice. The practice of bringing reason's perspective to the place where thumos is most activated, consistently enough and gently enough that thumos begins to trust the guidance. When thumos trusts reason, the circling thoughts slow, not because the content of your life has changed, because the part of you that was generating them no longer needs to. The third thing is what Plato would call the proper meeting of appetite. Genuine appetite, the body's real needs, must be met genuinely, not suppressed, not overridden, not dismissed as inconvenient. The soul cannot function in a body that is chronically underfed, undersupplied with rest, deprived of physical movement, or running on a deficit of genuine physical comfort. This sounds obvious, but the mind in chaos frequently ignores it. The anxious soul reaches for the simulated satisfactions of appetite, the scroll, and the sugar, and the numbness, while neglecting the actual satisfactions that the body genuinely needs. Real food, real rest, real physical activity that discharges the accumulated activation of a nervous system that has been running at high alert. When genuine appetite is met genuinely, it quiets, it stops reaching, it stops contributing to the noise, and the space it was occupying in your attention becomes available for something else. This is not wellness advice. It is Platonic philosophy applied to the specific condition of a soul trying to restore its proper order. The body is the ground of everything else. A soul trying to lead from a body that is not properly supported is a charioteer trying to drive horses that are exhausted and starving. The horses will not respond properly regardless of the quality of the driving. Here is what the restoration of order actually feels like, because it is worth describing precisely. It does not feel like the absence of emotion. Plato was not describing a state of detachment or numbness or the elimination of feeling. The ordered soul feels everything. Thumos still burns. Appetite still wants. The full range of human experience is still present, but it is present differently. Emotion moves through you rather than moving you. You can be genuinely angry without being anger. You can feel genuine fear without being fear. You can experience the pull of appetite without being pulled automatically wherever it points. There is a quality in the ordered soul of spaciousness, not emptiness, space. The specific experience of being present to what is happening without being consumed by it, of having genuine access to your own responses rather than just experiencing them as things that happen to you. Plato called this sophrosin, usually translated as temperance or moderation, but meaning something richer than either of those words suggests. The self-possession of a soul that is genuinely in charge of itself, not controlling itself from outside with force and rules, governing itself from inside with understanding and genuine hierarchy. The person with sophrosin is not the person with no passions. They are the person whose passions serve them rather than ruling them, who brings the full fire of thumos and the full energy of appetite to the directions reason has genuinely chosen, rather than being scattered across the directions those parts have chosen on their own. That is a different way of being in the world. There is something Plato said that most interpretations of his philosophy underemphasize. He said that the disordered soul suffers, not metaphorically, not morally, actually suffers. The soul out of order experiences a specific and genuine form of pain that is not caused by external circumstances, but by the internal conflict itself, the exhaustion of constant internal war. the specific grief of knowing what you value and being unable to act consistently with it. The anxiety of a thumos that has no worthy direction. The hollow dissatisfaction of an appetite that is endlessly fed but never nourished. This suffering is real, and it is caused by the structure of the soul's disorder rather than by anything in the external world, which means that changing the external world without addressing the internal order does not resolve it. You can change the job, the relationship, the city, the circumstances, and find the same suffering waiting in the new location because you brought the same disordered soul into it. This is one of the most important things Plato ever said, and it is worth sitting with. The hidden war inside your mind is not about the things you are thinking about. It is about the relationship between the parts of you that are doing the thinking. Change the content of the thoughts without changing the order of the soul, and the new content will quickly generate the same quality of conflict as the old content did. Change the order of the soul, and the same content that was previously generating chaos begins to be navigated with something approaching clarity, because the chaos was never about the content. It was always about the order. Let's bring this to where you actually live. You are going to have difficult moments, situations that activate thumos, circumstances that push appetite toward its least nourishing choices, periods when the noise gets loud enough that reason's signal gets very faint. This is not failure. This is the condition of being human. Plato was not describing an ideal to be perfectly achieved. He was describing a direction to be consistently oriented toward. In those difficult moments, the practice is not to try to immediately restore full order. That's not how it works, and expecting it is a recipe for the specific suffering of someone who keeps measuring themselves against an impossible standard. The practice is smaller than that. In the moment when the hidden war feels loudest, the practice is to locate reason, not to force it into command. Just to find it, to hear the signal even through the noise. That signal sounds like, I can see what is happening. I understand which part of me is activated and why. I know what I actually value here, even if I cannot fully act on it in this moment. That recognition alone, the simple act of reason being able to name what is happening rather than being lost inside it, is the beginning of restoration. Not the end. The beginning. And beginnings, Plato always believed, are everything. Because a soul that can find its way back to reason, even briefly, even in the middle of its loudest chaos, is a soul that knows the way home. And knowing the way home is not the same as being there, but it is the only thing that makes arriving possible. The hidden war inside your mind has been going on for a long time, probably longer than you can clearly remember, long enough that its background noise has started to feel like the natural state of things, like this is simply what it is to have a mind. It is not. What you have been experiencing is the specific, predictable, structurally explicable consequence of a soul whose parts have lost their proper relationship to each other. A thumos that has no worthy direction and has turned its energy toward threat detection. An appetite that has been offered simulated satisfactions in the place of genuine ones and has grown increasingly insistent and increasingly hollow. A reason that is present but has been crowded out of its governing position by the noise the other two parts are generating. That structure can change. Not quickly. Not without returning to it again and again as the disorder reasserts itself, as it will, because you are human, and the human soul does not maintain its order automatically or permanently, but it can change. Through the patient, daily, unglamorous practice of locating reason in the middle of the noise, of asking which part of you is currently running things and whether it should be, of directing thumos towards something worthy enough to stop its scanning for threats, of meeting appetite genuinely rather than reaching for what merely simulates genuineness. Plato called this the care of the soul, not a metaphor, a practice, a daily orientation toward the question of whether the parts of you are in their proper relationship, and a daily willingness to do the work of restoring that relationship when they are not. There is nothing more important you can do. Not because philosophy is more important than the practical demands of your life, because the soul is the instrument through which you engage with every single practical demand of your life. A disordered instrument produces disordered music regardless of the quality of the composition. An ordered one turns even ordinary material into something coherent, something that holds together, something that sounds, despite everything, like the life you were trying to live. The war inside your mind is not permanent. It is structural. And structure, unlike character, can be changed. Begin there.